What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Last week you saw us visit the main Copart lot here in Dallas, Texas. We're still down here today. We are at Copart South. Last week we saw a ton of exotics, a ton of high-end, and honestly a bit of everything. But today we're after one thing and one thing only. It just happens to be one of the things that I love most in this world: cheap Corvettes. One quick thing I do want to take a second to point out is how nice this Copart lot is. I know you guys saw it in the intro. That lobby is phenomenal. There's cars inside. It looks better than my house, to be honest. Not to mention the entire lot is paved. This is far and away the nicest Copart lot I've ever been to. But it's 103 degrees out, so I'm not going to run my mouth anymore. Let's check out some cars. Now, just like last week, it's blowing 20 miles an hour out here, so hopefully wind noise doesn't screw me. If it does, I apologize in advance. But now that I've got my standard Texas weather disclaimer out of the way, let's check out this C7 Grand Sport. First look, this thing does not look that bad. Obviously, there's a little front damage, there's a little rear damage, but nothing too hateful as far as what we can see right now. Now, fortunately, unlike last week where we spent all day going all over that yard and looking at as many cars as possible, we're pretty set today. We have 8 cars. This is all we're looking at. So we can actually take the time to dive into each one of these pretty heavily and see what's going on with them. As you guys know, we buy a ton of Corvettes. We're surely going to be in on every single one of these cars, so I really want to take my time and really see what's going on with them. So starting in the front, obviously it had some kind of impact right there. Not too hateful. I would be slightly surprised if the frame's bent, but I'd bet that tub's damaged. Obviously the hood is misaligned, the hood hinge is probably broken, needs a front bumper, needs a bunch of work. Hopefully it's nothing too bad. So the hood definitely rubs there on the fender, though it did pop past it pretty easily. As far as under here, that is what we're worried about, and that's why we're worried. So that's actually kind of surprising. I would figure that this car wouldn't have frame damage just based on the way it's hit, but obviously I don't know C7s as well as I thought I did. Now, the difference between us and most people that would be looking at this car is when I see something like that, I'm actually happy. For us, it means the people who would usually be interested in fixing this car just have that much more of a difficult time, so they tend not to bid as much, giving us a better chance to buy the thing. You know, call me a hater for being glad that this Corvette has frame damage, but it is what it is. It's part of the business. We look a little further in there and we notice a nice set of aftermarket headers. Don't know if I can see a brand on them, and from here I cannot. Let's see if we can see something on the other side. I think you can barely see it down there, but these are the best of the best American racing. Top-notch headers on it, AFE power intake, also a nice piece. Now, from a parts standpoint, unfortunately, those headers aren't as good as they seem. If you guys have been around the channel for a while, you guys have heard me say over and over how expensive catalytic converters are right now. When you have a long tube header like that, even if it's American racing, cooked, something very, very nice, it's really not that much more money than a catalytic converter. When we get cars with cats, we just scrap them. It's easy sale, easy money. So honestly, these days, I kind of prefer to get cats rather than cars with headers. With that noted, let's see if we can find any more damage on this thing. Obviously, front bumpers popped off over here. It doesn't look like there was any type of impact over here. I'm gonna guess that when it was hit over there, it kind of just threw everything off over here. I'd be very surprised if there's any frame damage, and unfortunately, I don't think we're gonna get a good look at it because we're surely not gonna get in here and start taking an intake off. Again, when we're not fixing it, it doesn't matter to us one bit if this car showed up with frame damage on the right-hand side as well. As far as the right-hand rear side of the body, everything seems intact. The wheels are nice. Obviously, when you get back here, you have to deal with that. Right-hand side's good. I wonder if this is an aftermarket exhaust, and no, it is not. And we've been over this on the channel before. There's not really that good of a reason to change the exhaust on a Grand Sport, a Z06, a ZR1. They're so good from the factory that it really isn't much of an upgrade to put something aftermarket on it. Fingers crossed, in just a second, we're gonna find out just how good it sounds. Obviously, these cars differ from the C6 greatly in that there's coolers in the rear end, so you have a little more to worry about in there. It actually looks like the cooler itself survived. It looks to be just cosmetic damage. I wouldn't be surprised if this car was hit in the front and maybe it spun around or just lightly tapped something in the rear. You can see that bumper bracket's broken, but again, it looks like that cooler itself is actually probably fine. Now, this quarter panel is a little high. You see that gap, and when compared to this gap over here on the untouched side, it's different. This is 2 or 3 millimeters up. So I'll let you guys speculate what that means. I'm by no means an expert body guy, but maybe there's a little something going on back here, or maybe just a couple tabs were broken when that got hit. Who knows? I would be very shocked that this car had any rear tub damage, which is the main source of a car like this being totaled when it's a rear end collision. We've seen everything there is to see on the outside. Let's head on in. You guys are gonna have to forgive me for this. I'm not an expert on the C7 interior trim levels like I am with the C6s, so let me know what this is. Let me know if it's a 1LZ, 2LZ, whatever. And while I don't know the trim level, I do know one thing. This interior is super clean, like super, super clean. The only issue we have whatsoever in here is the blown bag. Otherwise, it looks like a car that just rolled off the dealer lot. Let's see if we can get it started. I got a little power there. Ooh, ooh. I knew this thing was gonna sound good. I didn't know it was gonna sound this good. first instinct was that this car was cammed. As it warms up a little bit, it's kind of evened out. Let me know what you guys think. Put it in the comments. Is this thing cammed? If I had to put my money one way or the other, I'm saying this car is definitely aftermarket cam. And as I went to close the hood, I did notice one more thing in this engine bay. Go ahead, pause the video, put it in the comments. Let me know if you're seeing what I'm seeing. All right, time's up. We have ARP head studs down there. So if we had any doubt about it being cammed before, there's your answer. So with 100% certainty, this car is cammed. Somebody's gonna get a really nice car. Honestly, it would be really cool to see somebody fix this thing because it's almost too nice to part out, but you know how I feel. I hope they don't. Now let's head a couple years in the future and check out this C8. Now my experience with Corvettes falls mainly under the C6 category. So just like the C7, I'm kind of unaware of the different packages, the different interior trims and whatnot on the C8. So if there's something I'm missing, if there's something that I get wrong, definitely put it in the comments so I can know for the future. Now one thing I do know, just like most of you guys probably know, in the C8s, the engine's got put in the back. That means front-end collisions are a whole lot less scary. And that's a good thing because this one got hit fairly hard. So I doubted that frame rail was bent, and it was. This one, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it probably is kinked or something like that. And while this hood is taped shut, so we're not gonna get fully under there, let's see what we can see by looking under it. A whole lot of nothing. But looking through where the headlight used to be, you can tell very clearly that frame's bent. It's kinked right there. I'm gonna assume that that's insurance that's marked it right there. Either way, this thing actually needs some decent work. I'm gonna guess that they're all aluminum frame. Let me know if I'm wrong about that. Now, in case you're not aware, on the older cars, the bases and Grand Sports had steel frames. The Z06s and up had aluminum frames. These are all obviously base C8s, but I'm gonna guess that they changed with the times. This car definitely has some insurance markings there. You can see that's bent. That support which goes to the radiator is broken. But the radiator is still held in place, and honestly, while this condenser is hit, it really doesn't look like the radiator itself got hit, though it is marked by the same paint from the insurance company. Obviously, the fender is missing. Well, not missing inside the car, but it looks like it did hit the door. This mirror is kind of jacked up. Honestly, I think this would be more just of a respray. This door has no other damage, though they did note gap back here. So being that the roof is uneven here, and this is significantly lower than this by about, in my expert opinion, 3 to 4 millimeters. Obviously, there's something going on here. I don't know how these cars hold up in wrecks like this. I don't know if this is a common thing when a car's hitting the front end like that. Let me know in the comments if you do. Now, we do have a flat tire back here, but otherwise, the rear is untouched. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this car probably runs perfectly, so let's go ahead and find out. All right, I'm gonna try to get in here without doing any kind of damage. There is a headlight sitting there. There are some fenders sitting over there. Now, I'm not gonna pull that out and see what it did to the interior because I don't wanna do any further damage to it. Now, I did make a comment earlier about interior trim levels. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this probably has to be on the higher end. Honestly, if you're gonna have a black car, there's nothing better than a nice, bright interior, whether it's red or something else. The steering wheel also looks pretty sick with the red stripe there, but let's stop talking about that and see if it starts. All right, so the trunk, well, hood, popped. So we do have power. Let's see if it starts. While I might not be a fan of the Texas weather, one thing I am a fan of are Texas Corvettes because we are 2 for 2. This thing started right up. It sounds great. Let's go ahead and pop the old trunk here. I'm sure you guys can hear it. It's as quiet as you'd want any sports car to be. It sounds really, really healthy. All right, we've saw what we needed to see on this one. Let's go ahead and shut it off. Now, while we see some Corvettes, and we know immediately that it's not something we can buy due to the type of damage it has, this one is kind of borderline. It might just be bad enough where this is the car that we can buy. If I had to tailor make a C8 Corvette to be wrecked in just the exact way to make it perfect for me as far as return on investment and taking other people out of the bidding, I'd like one that hit a pole right in the side at about 40 miles an hour. Bad enough to bend the frame in half, bad enough to make it look terrible, but with a full front end so we can pull all that money out of the car. Those are the kind of cars we love to buy. Unfortunately, they don't come along that often, but when they do, we take advantage of them. Now, moving on to the next one, and out of the 3 that are here, this one is my favorite, and it is no mystery why. Check these babies out. Now, while one is damaged, I am a sucker for a set of forge lines. In fact, I have a set waiting in my office to go on my ZR1. This is honestly one of the best looking C8s I have seen. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that's some type of aftermarket wing. I don't think that I recall seeing Chevy making any type of carbon OEM wing option like that. From what I recall when these cars came out, it did have a high wing option, but it wasn't a lip like this. This is actually beginning to be quite the shame. This wheel is curved too. Do we have a good one up here? I can't see it from this angle. And no, we don't. So out of 4 forge lines on this car, all are damaged, though they don't appear to be damaged bad. I think they're all fixable, and honestly, for the right car, you probably use them as is. Now, same deal with the hood on this car. We're not gonna go crazy with it, but this one, based on the front end shaking around there, I think this one might have a little more going on with it. See, I don't know what you guys can see under there. I can't see a whole lot either. One thing I do see, and I'm not sure if you guys can see it, there is a giant X on that frame right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that is damaged, bent, kinked, whatever. This is another one of those front end hits that I usually tell you guys I am very scared to buy. However, with this car, being that the engine's in the rear, I would have no hesitation buying this car. Let's hop in it and see if she starts up. So just like the last interior, this is a full stitch dashboard. However, it doesn't look nearly as good in my opinion because it's a simple black with white stitching. Let's see here. Oh, she popped. She's got some power, but does she have enough? Absolutely. 3 for 3, we are on a roll here. Now this car does have both front airbags blown, so in this one you'd be putting a dash in it. It does have the same, what I'm imagining is a stock exhaust. However, this one is painted black. Everything sounds healthy back here, but that wouldn't mean much if it has a knock or something like that, so let's check it out. Well, just like the last one, it's a good running car. It starts right up, engine is super quiet, and I have no reservations buying this car and driving it after I fix the damage whatsoever. Just like the other car, this car has absolutely no rear end damage. The only thing that's a little bit different is it has the wing, it has some kind of a mesh insert like that, and black exhaust tips. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say while this one does appear to have a frame damage issue up there as well, this thing's gonna be a little bit easier to fix. The roof is aligned. There is no notes from insurance about body gaps not lining up. Everything is intact up here. As you can see, there's no gap whatsoever. See, that fender gap there is not perfect, but I guess that's to be expected when this thing is hit. If I had to pick one of the 3 C8s here to fix, it's probably gonna be that one. That's probably gonna be the easiest. And while the color scheme isn't the best, I think it's gonna be an easy fix and probably a great deal for somebody. And again, on to the next one. Let's shut her down. Now, last but not least on the list of C8s, we're gonna go over to this one, which is hit a little harder, obviously. This is the front frame rail on it, and it is torn to shreds. The driver's side over here looks a little better. It does have some damage, but not to that extent. Same deal over here on this side, though this upper is in better shape. It doesn't appear to have any damage except this fender mount, which could easily be fixed. The car is missing the battery. The rear subframe is damaged down there. Obviously, the AC lines are completely ripped off. The condenser is missing, gone. The radiator's gone. Not to mention this car is sealed shut on the driver's side. So we're not gonna get in here. We're not gonna start this one. Now it does look like at some point this had a rear wing removed from it. Whether it's OEM or aftermarket, I do not know. This car does have the same little mesh grille down here that we saw in the last car. Otherwise, it looks to be stock, and fortunately on the rear, for what it's worth, it looks untouched. One thing this does have is the red engine cover. I know that was an option straight from Chevy. I know it was very popular when it first came out and a lot of people went for it. One other thing I noticed about this car is it has these stickers on it, Stingray R. It also has that on the center caps. Now, as far as interior goes, this one takes the cake and it's not even close. Full red and black stitched again, but unlike the last one, this has the comp seats and this is what you want. These were the best available seats you could get in a seat. And if I order one, it would absolutely have to have this. Obviously, the seatbelt's locked. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that one is either locked over there or cut as well. Driver's bag is blown, passenger is not. This interior, being that the windows are down, is not the cleanest, but there's no significant damage. There's no heavy water damage to this or anything, though it is mildly damp. Overall, if I did have to pick a car based on the interior, it's obviously going to be this one. And like I said, it's not even close. Now, while this front end does look scary, the sides, the roof, they all line up like they should. So that first one is the only one that we've seen that has some type of issue up here. Definitely fairly easily fixable, though it is the worst of the 3, in my opinion. As far as C8 Corvettes go, this one is probably still going to be fixed by somebody, but it doesn't look that bad. I'll have to go back and check the Copart listing to see if this thing was actually listed as running, but if it is listed as running, if everything looks kosher on that, this is one of the ones we'd be in on. And out of the 3 here, this is probably the one we are most likely to end up with. And now we jump back 20 years, back to the year of 1999, right before Y2K took everybody down, and check out this C5. Fortunately, if there was some type of disaster back then, I have no doubt that this C5 would have held up because these things were absolute tanks, despite what you see here about this one being wrecked. We're going to ignore that. And as far as C5s go, this thing is very clean. It's definitely somebody's baby that looks like they maybe ran it under something. Maybe he was just driving along, flexing his C5, feeling real good about life, and just kind of ignored the fact that he was running under a pickup truck. I don't know. They say speculation has never done anybody any good, but it sure is fun. Now, unfortunately with this one, the hood is stuck shut. They have the door seals. So you know what I'm gonna say? Unfortunately, we're not getting in that one. We're not gonna hear it run. And honestly, I'm not too worried about it, because if you're ranking C5s that we would buy, this is pretty far down the list. Not that it isn't a nice car, because it absolutely is. However, the problem is, it's too nice. This is light front end damage. I guarantee you there's no frame damage in this. Stuff like the fenders, the headlight cover, the hood, that's enough to total these cars these days, because unfortunately, you can't buy new parts for most of that stuff. However, when you talk about fixing one of these cars, there are plenty of guys that have access to these parts used, you know, from real reputable places online, like LeeCParts.com, shameless plug. And when you look at this car through the lens of how hard it is to fix versus how an insurance company looks at it, you get two very different results, because honestly, you could probably fix this thing with $2 grand in parts and some paint. Couple that with the fact that it's automatic and there's not a whole lot there for us. So this one we're not going to spend too much time on, though it is a nice car. And honestly, once it's fixed, it's going to make somebody a great C5. Now, doing a little more time traveling back into the future just a bit, we have a base C7. This is slightly newer. It is a 2019, and with these, I'm not positive on what differences there were from a year to year, but they started these in 14, and I believe that 19 was the last year. Now, let's see what we have going on under here. Radiator support damaged. It honestly looks just like a C6 support, and those things are notoriously fragile. And this is probably why it's totaled. It is very subtle to the point where it might not come up on video, but that front bar is ever so slightly bowed in. Just like the C6s, that is a non-removable bumper beam. You have to cut that off if you want to repair it. It's not like other cars where they have a bash bar up there. If this thing's bowed in, if this thing's bent, it's almost always a total. With the C6, Z06s, and ZR1s, if the aluminum frame is nicked whatsoever, automatically total. It definitely sucks, but it also opens up the opportunity to find some special deals in the C6 market. But yeah, honestly, this thing does not look bad whatsoever. Go ahead and give it the old walk around, see what the rear end looks like. Maybe there's something we didn't see. And no, it looks great, like really good. Once again, this is not a car we can buy. We're not going to pull their wrap off, so unfortunately, we're not going to start this one either. As far as interior trim goes, this is probably pretty low on the list, but again, it's in phenomenal shape. There is not a single bag blown. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys saw that very, very easy fix C6 that I recently rebuilt. This kind of reminds me of that car. It looks like this is something you could get in fixed for like nothing. And by nothing, I mean a couple $1,000 bucks. But when you're talking about a $30,000 plus car, I mean, that pretty much is nothing, right? So while this car makes absolutely no sense from a parts standpoint as far as parting it out, maybe I'll have my eye on this one for another quick fix. The C6 went super quick. It gave us no trouble rebuilding that thing. We paid just under 13 for it. We had a couple grand in it. We had roughly 15 grand in that car when it was all said and done. We sold it for 20 not even a week later. So that went really well. Maybe here's another opportunity. But I can't resist any longer. I've had the urge to jump right down here the whole time we've been here. It's time to check out this C6 Grand Sport. Now, while this one certainly isn't as nice as the one we saw in the first video here in Dallas last week, still looks like a really nice car. This one looks like it might make a little more sense from a parts standpoint, and you will understand that once we get back here to the rear. Now, unlike that last one we saw, this one has definitely hit hard enough to bend this frame under here and damage that rear tub. In fact, I bet we can see it. This is honestly worse than I was expecting when I opened this hatch. A lot of times you can re-glass those tubs if they're minor cracks, but when it's completely out of the way like that, you pretty much have to replace the whole thing. And unfortunately, that is not easy, cheap, or fun. If I were fixing one, I would probably shy away from something like that. But that's a good thing, because that means somebody like me can buy this thing and part it out. Now, this one we are definitely going to try to start, because I need to hear it. There's a very good chance this thing ends up back in Maryland with us. So hopefully it sounds good, hopefully it doesn't have any issues, and we can have some inside information on this car. I say inside information as I'm blasting it all across YouTube, but you get the point. And now for some not so inside information. This interior is sick. This is a 12 and up. You can tell by the seats. It is the best color in the seats, and it is the best style seat. While this isn't a 4LT leather wrapped interior car, at least it has the red lower interior. Funny enough, that was not an option if you chose to get the leather wrapped interior. So honestly, I consider this right up there. I could take one of these, or I could take one of the leather wrapped. Either way, I love it. In these, you don't have to worry about the dash peeling, which if you've watched any of my videos before, is a major issue. And you still get a really sick color combo. So honestly, kind of the best of both worlds here. Not to mention it has the newer steering wheel design, which started in 2012 with the silver trim around there. It doesn't sound like much, but if you look at an 06 Vette steering wheel, it is very, very different. And while I could sit here and look at this interior all day, it's time to get this thing started. But first, we're gonna pop the hood, make sure everything's kosher before we go cranking it up. I mean, it is as stock gets. They pull so much money stock that I'm not even gonna sweat it if it's not canned, doesn't have a bunch of aftermarket parts on it, because honestly, this is so good how it is already. Like I had mentioned earlier, it has stock headers, which means stock cats, and that means we get a nice chunk of change from that. Everything definitely looks kosher under there. Let's go ahead and crank her up. Well, it opened a minute ago. We'll have to do this the hard way. Now, being that that didn't open, I think this might be where we use our jump box. Yep. All right, we're back at it. We got the jump pack on it. The alarm was yelling at me. We got that taken care of. We're not making a fuss out here anymore. Let's go ahead and start it up. Corvette warehouse. I'm gonna have to look that up. I'm gonna go out on a limb and assume it's some kind of Corvette business. That would be a pretty logical guess, I suppose. Okay, let's go ahead and see how the engine sounds. Dead nuts quiet. I'm jumping for joy anytime something like this comes into the shop. Now, as far as the back goes, even with the damaged exhaust, proof yet again that you cannot make a Corvette sound bad. You can see under there that it is a NPP, a bi-mode muffler, which means it's adjustable. You can pull a fuse in there and make it sound even louder. Otherwise, it's based off throttle input and RPM. It gets louder as you drive it more aggressively. When you're getting into the higher trim cars, a lot more of them have them, and that's why a lot of people just choose not to change exhaust. And honestly, I can't blame them. So this car, a winner through and through. Now, before we move on to this last C7, I've told you guys which car I'm most likely to buy. Now, I need you guys to tell me in the comments, if you could buy any one of these cars here, whether it be for parts to try to make a profit on it that way, to repair it and sell it, or to repair it and drive it, which one would you pick? Like I just said, from a parts standpoint, it's that one 100%. If I had to pick one to fix, while I do love the C8s, I'm probably taking that beautiful Grand Sport up there. I've never had a C7, and while these C8s surely are tempting, there is something about a nice cammed white C7 that just does it for me. But that's enough talking about what we've already seen. Let's go ahead and check out the last car of the day. And you don't have to look hard to realize this thing is whacked. Wow. Believe it or not, the hood actually latches over there. Yes, I am also shocked. While we're not going to start this one because, again, Copart has it somewhat sealed up, we don't want to go ripping that off there. This car is one that you could potentially see us buy. As far as base C7s go, it fits the bill as far as damage. We'll have to refer back to Copart's listing to see if this car is a runner or not. It is manual, so check that box off. That is a plus for us when it comes to part outs. Now back up here to the front. This doesn't leave much for imagination. Again, this thing is just completely toasted. I hope you guys can see the frame rail through there as well as I can right here, but that thing is completely broke off. That is completely severed. Don't know where the rest of it is. Oh, that's it right here. By the angle of that, I thought that was the front section of the frame. However, that is the driver's side frame. And yes, I'm glad you asked. It is completely parallel with the front section of the frame. From a dead head-on look at this car, you can tell the whole front end is just that way. And of course, as it would, it brought this passenger frame rail over with it, though it isn't completely broken like the driver's. Now for the good news. These engines sit so far back that even with that damage over there, it didn't hit the engine. If you can see where it broke off there, there's no feasible way that that could hit the engine. The first thing it would have hit is that ABS pump or the ABS connector there, and it didn't do it. So perfect example of a car that we would end up buying. In my opinion, there's not a person on this planet that should fix this car. It's not worth it to me, and honestly, I doubt anybody can make financial sense of fixing that car. If you're watching this and you're sitting there thinking, hey, I could fix that thing, or I should be fixing that thing, let me know why. Give me your argument in the comments. I'd love to hear it and get a different point of view. Now for the good news on the car. Back end, untouched. From the doors back, the car is mint. Now, when you move from the doors forward, yeah, there's a couple issues. Small issues, fender bender type stuff, right? As far as interior package, it's pretty plain Jane. The dash isn't stitched. This is gonna be a lower trim. But even though it's kind of exposed to the elements here, which we'll see if we can kind of, it's not gonna do much, is it? A lot of good that did. Anyway, like I said, interior, basic but clean. Yes, this seatbelt is locked. I can't tell him the passenger right now. We're not going to go ahead and open it because it doesn't have any battery power. But needless to say, I would not be too unhappy if I bought this car and the interior showed up just like that. we have certainly seen and received much, much, much worse. There are cars that are exposed to the elements like that, and there are cars that are like exposed to the elements. With that said, that is gonna do it for the last car here at Copart South. Guys, if you've watched till this point in the video, I really appreciate it. I'm sure I look and sound like hell because it is hot as shit out here. But as you guys know, I honestly love coming out and looking at cars like this. It's a blast. Even if we don't end up buying any of this stuff, it's great to come out and look at it. And every time I come, I learn something new. And while that's gonna do it for this lot, we are not done in Texas yet. Next week, we're gonna be back with another huge lot that has honestly everything, from JDM to exotics to American muscle, everything. I can't wait to bring you guys along for the ride. We always find a bunch of cool stuff when we walk into a salvage auction lot with no plan whatsoever. But as always, if you enjoyed this, if you like coming along for the ride, make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. I am gonna go find the coldest hotel room in the entire Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I will see you guys next time.